Welcome to the ultimate Silent Hill 4 Hauntings guide. This video is all about explaining the haunting mechanics in Silent Hill 4, which make the room a truly unique and terrifying Silent Hill experience. So if you've ever wondered how hauntings work, or when they appear, or the odds of certain hauntings happening in a playthrough, then this video is for you. In order to answer the questions of how hauntings work in Silent Hill 4, I took it upon myself to run some tests on my own copy for the PlayStation 2, and these tests led me down a rabbit hole that led to more and more questions as I went through hole after 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 hole. But through this extensive testing, I think I finally have a definitive understanding of how hauntings work in Silent Hill 4. And you might be surprised that some hauntings may not be as random as you think. So grab some wine, light a candle, saddle up next to your favorite hole in the wall, and let's get into it. First, let's go over some basic information about hauntings, just to get everyone up to speed. So we'll start with these 4 questions. Number 1, what are hauntings? Number 2, what do hauntings do? Number 3, how many different hauntings are there? And number 4, when do these hauntings occur? The first 3 questions are pretty straightforward, but number 4 might take a little more explanation, so let's get into it. What are hauntings? So about halfway through the game, the room becomes haunted, meaning the room stops healing you. And not only does the room stop healing you, you actually have a chance to encounter a phenomenon called a haunting that drains your health if you get too close to it. And this makes the latter half of Silent Hill 4 very challenging, but at the same time, it's pretty cool to see these different hauntings. It makes the game unique, and also much creepier towards the second half. And what do hauntings do? Hauntings add an extra challenge to the game. Depending where the haunting happens, they can be really difficult to avoid, especially if it happens near your bed, the item box, and the save point. All of these areas are high traffic for the player, so it's very easy to lose health over time. But fortunately, you can clear hauntings by 2 methods. First, by equipping a saint medallion and walking near the haunting, and second, by putting a holy candle near the haunting. Clearing hauntings affects the ending you actually get. There's a total of 4 different endings in Silent Hill 4. And in order to get 2 of these endings, you need to clear over 80% of the hauntings in room 302. How many different hauntings are there? There's a total of 14 unique hauntings in the PlayStation 2 version of the game, and that's the one I'll be covering in this video. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, the PC version only has half, or 7 of these hauntings. And finally, when do these hauntings occur? This is a more difficult question to answer. Some hauntings are more rare than others, some have a special condition to encounter them, and some only occur at certain points in the game. It's easier to think of hauntings as 3 separate groups that happen throughout 3 stages of the game. So what do I mean by that? Hauntings occur in 3 separate phases in the second half of the game, and in these 3 distinct phases, 3 different groups or clusters of hauntings can occur. So let's start by explaining these phases, and in doing so, we can start at the very beginning when hauntings can start to happen. Haunting Phase 1 starts in the hospital when you try to go through the hole with Eileen. And once you're in the room, the ceiling fan falls down, and the air becomes really oppressive, and the room stops healing you. So once you return back to the hospital from the room at this point in the game, you are now in Haunting Phase 1. So after the cutscene where Eileen scolds you for leaving her behind, you now have a chance to experience hauntings when you return to the room again. And we'll cover these chances in just a little bit. Haunting Phase 1 extends from this hole inside the hospital all the way to the hole below the subway world for the second time, right here. So what hauntings can you encounter during Haunting Phase 1? In Haunting Phase 1, you can only encounter hauntings from Haunting Cluster A. So Haunting Cluster A has a total of 4 different hauntings. 3 of these hauntings are what I call standard hauntings, and 1 is a special kind of haunting. The 3 standard hauntings are Wandering Shoes, Rattling Windows, and the Wall Clock. And the special haunting is the Closet Shadow. So in order to see the special haunting within Haunting Phase 1, you need to encounter each of the 3 standard hauntings. But you do not need to clear them, you only need to see them. But clearing one haunting tends to make the encounter rate for the next haunting increase. So speaking of encounter rate and how hauntings function in the game, each time you go through the hole, you roll a chance at getting a haunting. These are not locked in during a save or playthrough. Each time you enter a hole, there is a chance that you will encounter a new haunting. And you can think of it as each hole equals re-roll. So every time you enter the hole, you basically roll the dice. And another very important note, you need to be outside of room 302 for a set amount of time in order to experience a new haunting after clearing a previous haunting. And how long is this set time? Exactly 1 minute. I tested this extensively at different intervals from 10 seconds all the way up to 30 minutes, but the minimum time you need to be outside of the room in order to see a new haunting is 1 minute. Being outside any longer does not increase your odds of encountering a new haunting. And for the most part, after you clear a haunting, you will not be able to encounter it again. But there are a few exceptions that we'll cover later. So your first time going into the hole in Phase 1, granted that you waited at least 1 minute, you are given the approximate following odds of encountering each haunting, which I will now show you here. The Wandering Shoes have about a 35% chance of occurring. The Rattling Windows have the same chance at 35%. The Wall Clock has a slightly lower chance at 20%, and there's also a chance that no haunting will occur, and in Cluster A, that chance is 10%. If you want to encounter the special haunting, the Closet Shadow, within Phase 1, you again need to at least see the 3 previous hauntings. And once you do, your odds of encountering the Closet Shadow are actually pretty high at 50%, and the other 50% means that no haunting will occur. So now that we've covered Phase 1 and Cluster A hauntings, we'll move on to Haunting Phase 2. So when does this new phase occur? The trigger for Phase 2 is the Forest World door at the end of the spiral staircase in the below subway world part of the game, which is right here. Once you go through this door, you will trigger Phase 2 of the hauntings, but this phase is not limited to the Forest World and beyond. You can actually go back into the subway world, or even earlier if you want, and get the Cluster B hauntings. The door is merely the trigger that starts the next set of hauntings, and you just need to pass through it once. And once you do, there's no going back to Phase 1. And so before moving on to the next cluster of hauntings, we need to go over a few quirks of how hauntings function. First, if you miss any hauntings from the previous cluster, don't worry, they can reappear in the next phase of hauntings, and will be mixed in with the next haunting cluster. However, it seems to me that the hauntings in the current phase take priority over the hauntings of the previous phase, and I'm not exactly sure why. This video tested every haunting, assuming you cleared every haunting from the previous cluster, and this was just done for time and my sanity's sake, so not too sure about this. And another unique kind of quirk happens in the next phase of hauntings, and that's that the special haunting from the previous cluster can actually appear without the condition of seeing the standard hauntings from the same cluster. So for example, if I missed the Wall Clock haunting in Phase 1, I normally wouldn't be able to see the Closet Shadow if I stayed in Phase 1 until I do see the Wall Clock haunting. But if I missed the Wall Clock haunting and went on ahead to Phase 2, there is now a chance to encounter the Closet Shadow regardless, which is pretty interesting. I'm still not sure why this happens, but it does. So now, moving on to Cluster B hauntings. And these hauntings actually get a little more complicated because there's a lot more conditions required to see everything. So in Haunting Phase 2, you can encounter hauntings from both Cluster A and Cluster B. And Cluster B has a total of 5 unique hauntings, only 2 of which are what I call standard hauntings. And the 2 standard hauntings are the refrigerator and the television set. And there are also 2 recurring hauntings, meaning they can come back more than once. One of these recurring hauntings is the wall cracks, and the other is the item wall chest. But in order to get the item wall chest haunting, you need to have picked up the shabby doll from Walter during the apartment world, and the shabby doll must be inside the item chest in order for the haunting to appear. As long as the doll is in the chest, the haunting can return, and if you take it out into your inventory, it will not occur. There's also one special haunting that has 2 conditions, and this special haunting is one of the best in my opinion, and that's the telephone caller.
I'm always watching you. I'm always watching you. I'm always watching you.
The first condition is that you need to have picked up the doll from Walter in order to encounter this haunting. It will not occur if you just left the doll there. The doll does not, however, need to be inside the chest for the haunting to happen. You can have it in your inventory. You just need to have picked it up. And the second condition, you need to have seen every previous haunting from Cluster B in order to get the telephone caller to appear. Again, you don't need to have cleared every haunting, only see each one in the cluster. So moving on to the Cluster B haunting encounter rates, and keep in mind these percentages are assuming that you've cleared every haunting from the previous cluster. The odds are also slightly different depending on whether or not you have the shabby doll inside the item chest. If you don't leave the doll in the chest, the odds of each haunting are as follows. The wall cracks have a 30% chance to appear, the refrigerator has a 25% chance to happen, and the television set has a 15% chance to occur. And there's also a higher rate of no haunting happening at 30%. And if you do leave the doll in the chest, the odds change accordingly. The wall cracks are at 15%, the refrigerator at 20%, the television set at 15%, and the item wall chest at 20%, although it feels like much, much more. And finally, there's still a chance that nothing happens, which remains at 30%. So for the special haunting, if you meet the 2 conditions of seeing every haunting within the cluster and picked up the doll from Walter, your odds of encountering the telephone caller haunting are 20%. And the final phase of the game is Phase 3. Phase 3 is triggered once you pass through this door at the bottom of the wheelchair passageway, where you put that round thing in the door. I forgot what it's called. But once you do, and you pass through it, you successfully triggered Phase 3 of the Hauntings. And this phase lasts until the end of the game. And just like the other phases, this phase is not limited to the below Forest World area and beyond. You can go back to any other previous hole in any area and still get the Cluster C hauntings. And speaking of which, in Haunting Cluster C, there are a total of 5 new unique hauntings. But I will say that the recurring wall cracks haunting from Cluster B will inevitably pop up in your playthrough from time to time. This is just unavoidable. And again, if you've missed any haunting from Cluster A or Cluster B, they will show up here again, but it might not take priority over these new hauntings. And out of the 5 new unique hauntings in Cluster C, there are 3 standard ones, which are the cushion chair, the kitchen faucet, and the fan favorite front door peephole. And there's also one new recurring haunting, the emerging ghosts. And this haunting is probably the most annoying and most dangerous one. It gets in your way twice. Every time you go into the room. It will do damage to you as soon as you wake up in the bed every time you go into the room. And it also shows up in the laundry room every time you try to go back. So it's best just to clear this haunting every time it happens. Cluster C also has claim to the most elusive yet awesome haunting, which is Walter's portrait, which is this cluster's special haunting. And there are 2 conditions required to get Walter's portrait. First, if you've noticed the pattern already, you need to at least see every haunting from Cluster C. And second, you must pick up the shabby doll from Walter, otherwise this haunting will never appear. But just like the telephone caller, you don't need to put the doll in the item chest for the haunting to appear. You can have it in your inventory. And it's actually pretty hard to clear every haunting until this point, but it is possible if you're very diligent in finding every holy candle and you save all of your saint medallions until this point. But no matter what, once you're in phase 3, the hauntings get pretty complicated and it might be harder to get a specific haunting that you're looking for. And just one final note about how hauntings function. I'm not sure of the percentage chance of this, but it seems as though new hauntings are less likely to appear within the cluster if you do not clear the previous haunting. Maybe someone in the future can help me test this or verify this, but this seems to be the case. Another kind of peculiarity seems to occur with the wall cracks and emerging ghosts haunting. Both are recurring hauntings, but if one spawns, the other seems to not spawn. I think this is because the wall cracks and emerging ghosts share the same space on the living room wall, so I think they can't co-occur, but more testing is needed to verify this. However, unfortunately, the item wall chest can still happen at any time, and it seems like all the time for some reason. And finally, the odds for the Cluster C hauntings are as follows. Again, this is assuming you've cleared every previous haunting from Cluster A and Cluster B. Also, keep in mind that it's almost impossible to not have the wall cracks haunting from Cluster B show up in phase 3, so I'm just going to include the odds of this happening again here. So the odds for Cluster C hauntings are as follows. The cushion chair has a 20% chance of occurring, and this haunting is invisible until you use a candle or medallion on it, just keep that in mind. The kitchen faucet has a 20% chance to appear. The front door peephole has a 10% chance of happening, and the emerging ghosts have a 10% chance of happening. And keep in mind this will not occur if the wall cracks are present, but the wall cracks can go away on their own. And the wall cracks have a 10% chance of showing up. And again, they can't occur at the same time as the emerging ghosts. And also, there's a 30% chance of no haunting occurring at all. So finally, if you've met the 2 preconditions for Walter's portrait, the chances are, I'm actually not sure 100% on this one, I must admit, but I'm going to say 10 to 15%. I reloaded this particular save with every condition met 150 times, and I only got the portrait haunting 12 times. So that's right at that 12.5%-ish line. I know this isn't enough to be statistically significant or whatever, but this is the best I could do without losing my mind. I did get it back to back once, which was pretty cool and lucky, and the longest duration between encounters was 18 times. So if you're lucky enough to see the Walter portrait and you clear it, it seems like the only hauntings that can occur after this point are the item wall chest, the wall cracks, and emerging ghosts. But I did happen to get the wandering shoes twice in the same cluster after close to 1,000 resets, so I'm not sure exactly what that's about. Maybe my game's haunted, who knows. And also, some hauntings can occur at the same time, but it seems like this is very rare, and I'm not too sure of the odds on this happening. Maybe if you know, please let me know.
What the hell?
I hope this video was helpful to give you more clarity about hauntings in the game, but I know this work is not done. If anyone has their own data, or something they want to add in the comments, please do. And so we can finally have some concrete answers to how Silent Hill 4 hauntings work. And this was a really fun video to make. I love Silent Hill 4. I've grown to love it even more after making this video, believe it or not. So I hope this guide was helpful for you, and you can get some use out of it to get that haunting you want. And let me know what your favorite haunting is in the comments. And as always, thanks for watching.